Hello, this is the Accounting 212 Final Exam Study Guide, Principles of Accounting 2. So first, let's revisit the class point system. So we have Connect Homework that is worth 1,400 points. We had a midterm exam about the midway point of the class that's worth 2,750 points. This final exam is worth 2,750 points. There's a management accounting project that was worth 2,000 points, and blogs worth 1,100 points. When you add all this together, it comes to 10,000 points. The nature of this test is that we have 20 multiple choice questions on a Blackboard test, and each of them is worth 70 points. Also, there are 4 problems, and each of those are worth 340 points. Here you need to show all work, and from it you'll get significant partial credit. Do not leave any of these blank, because if you did, I wouldn't allow you any curve that I might provide on the test. Calculators are allowed, whether at a testing center or being remotely proctored, but don't use a cell phone as a calculator at home or at a testing center. Also, the test is closed book, and you can use no notes. Could say you cannot use notes. The test covers chapters 18 through 24. So 18 was the furthest to go. There are 2 questions from chapter 18 and a problem. The 2 questions were calculate the contribution margin ratio, and that's discussed on page 785 of your book, and also define cost volume profit analysis, and that's page 778. One of the 4 problems is much like the high-low video I did way back in the learning unit that has exercise 18. So here we're going to calculate the cost equation using the high-low method, just like exercise 18.7 on page 804, and 18.7 was the video. Chapter 19, there are 2 multiple choice questions dealing with the first, what's the difference between variable costing and absorption costing? And this is very similar to quick check number 6, page 827, and there the answer is provided on page 831. Number 2, compute variable costing, cost per unit, and this is very similar to what's discussed in Exhibit 19.2, page 817. Another problem appears from Chapter 19, and there wasn't a video that goes along with that. This problem has you compare variable costing, cost per unit, and absorption costing, cost per unit, and it is a problem rather than a multiple choice that looks a lot like Exhibit 19.2. So again, page 817, Exhibit 19.2 is fairly important to doing well on the test. Chapter 20 is the budgeting chapter, and we've got 3 multiple choice questions for this chapter. One is calculate general and administrative expense budget. That's from page 857. Here expect some numbers, some of which you'll probably need to use, some you may not, and you'll have to calculate that line item on the budget. Number 2, calculate a selling expense budget item. Very similar to number 1, except you're calculating the selling expense budget line item number instead of the general and administrative expense number. Remember, these are multiple choice questions, so there'll be 4 answers, and you need to pick the right one. And finally, calculate a sales budget line item, and my reference here is page 854. There are 5 multiple choice questions out of chapter 21. One is a flexible budget performance report, and reading things off of it, very similar to what's discussed on page 897. There's a question that quite simply you need to know that a variable budget is another name for a flexible budget. That's discussed on page 898. You have a question, multiple choice type question, that asks about the purpose of a flexible budget. Page 898 talks about those. You also kind of saw the purpose with your case study. Then there are 2 variance formulas. Question 4 is the cost variance formula from Exhibit 21.7 on page 904. And number 5 is the price variance formula, second full paragraph, in Exhibit 21.8 on page 904. In chapter 22, there are 2 multiple choice questions and a problem that appear on the test based on the information you learned in this chapter. One is determine whether costs are controllable or uncontrollable. So I'll probably give you some facts and ask you to pick which type of cost is controllable or which type is uncontrollable, and one of them will stand out there in that question. Also, might ask you a multiple choice type question that deals with responsibility accounting. Page 933, 944 is where that's discussed. And then the chapter 22 problem, which will just be a blank Excel page where you have to put something in there, will be much like the responsibility accounting video that was done. So remember that responsibility items, or responsibility accounting, starts to think about doing a report showing how a person did over things that they were accountable for. So usually problems creep up here, as they did in that video, when we're thinking about somebody having something on the report that they really can't control. You know, one example to me would be if the company president's son is working for you and you're told you can discipline him, but you ultimately can't fire him. Not that we should always be talking about firing, but just, if you don't have the ultimate control over him, if ultimately the control lies with his parent, then clearly you would not be in a position to have him on your report. Chapter 23, we have 2 multiple choice questions. One is the definition of an opportunity cost, and that's discussed on page 987. And then calculate whether to make or buy the product. So these are popular questions in the management accounting section of the book. Also a very easy to understand problem in real life. You're given some facts. Should you keep your factory and make the items? Or should you go ahead and close up your factory and just buy the items from someplace else? Now, if you look, there's really a lot on this test from chapter 24, and that should please you because that's the most recent chapter that you've been dealing with. So there are 4 multiple choice questions. Question number 1 and number 2 are calculate the net present value for a machine, and that's discussed on page 1020 and 1021. Let's go ahead and move down to the problem for a minute and notice it's another net present value problem. And here you're using maker's depreciation, like problem 24-3A on page 1036, 24-3B on page 1038, and the video that I did that accompanies chapter 24. So look very carefully at the net present value video and these various problems I'm referring you to. Number 3 will have you compute the payback period for 2 machines. And question 4 has you calculate the accounting rate of return, and that's defined in the book on page 1019, 1020. and I've referred you to this exhibit that shows you the accounting rate of return formula, which is exhibit 24.6 on those pages. So with this, I wish you luck on the test, and let me know if you have any questions. Take care.